Well, time for another coffee with Kilroy. So, join me as we page through today. Masada, Epic Last Stand in the Desert from Minden Games. This is a battle game book. First off, make sure you got your coffee or your juice or your Java or your soda or your tea or your milk or whatever suits your fancy. I've been covering a lot of solo book games, whatever you might want to call them. Different people call them different things. Mike Lambo's got his series. He calls them a solitaire war game. There's a solitaire war game book. You've got Noah Peterson's got a few of these, and he just calls them, he doesn't really put a name on them. They're just kind of almost roll and writes is what he has. Worthington calls them a book game, is what they're calling their games in the series. And then these are a roll and write solitaire war game is the Kilpatrick. So, people call them different things, but I decided that, or I remembered, I should say, that I had a game from Minden. Minden has been doing some, at least one, if not, I think they have a few in this line, a Battlegame Book. And I've had this for a while and decided, I pull that out because, again, this influx of solo board game books or solo war game books is not necessarily new. I mean, there's a lot of players in the space now, but this goes back a while, and I've done a video on a board game book that goes back to, I think it's the Sandhurst games, that goes back to, I think, the 80s, actually. So this has been around for a while, and it's just that, I guess with COVID and supply chain, others are starting to see it as an opportunity, and I guess with publishing the way it is now, that you can, it's easier to produce stuff like this. That's all led up to having more of those on the market, but I thought I'd pull this one out and share it with you guys over a cup of coffee. And I actually might, given that there's so many of these, I've been putting anything that's book related, which a lot of my Coffee with Kilroys are, I've been putting that under the bookshelf. I'll probably keep these under that bookshelf along with war game books that I cover, or even history books. But I might think about doing a whole separate section on just book games, so that if you guys want to just take a look at what I've covered and what's out there, you can just go to that tab and check those out, or that playlist, I should say. So this is Masada, and this is a little different than the other games that are out there, which are kind of meant to be played in the book and not necessarily have to pull stuff out. I mean, we've talked about it before on some of these games, whether you mark them up or use trace paper or make copies and however you want to handle doing it. Some of those games, especially the roll and write type games, just do multiple copies of those pages so you can write them and then move on to the next one. And Worthington kind of has that a little bit too with their games on. You can just mark in the book and then move on. This one really kind of presupposes that you're going to pull some stuff out of here and then play with it separately, so to speak. But let's get in here and take a look at this. So this is a battle game book, and if there are others out there on this, I'm pretty sure they did some others in this line. This is just the one I grabbed because I was kind of interested in this topic. There's not a lot of coverage, if any, on this battle or this siege. My first, I guess, interest in it was there was like a made-for-TV movie, I believe. I think it had Peter O'Toole in it that dealt with this siege. So that dates me. So you got your table of contents. talking about it here. And then there's a lot of history in this. This is how to use the book, but then it says Battlegame Book, so there should be several in this line, I would hope, or would think. There is a lot of history in here about how what took place and how it took place, and then you get the siege here. So I find this interesting just by having some of this history here and being able to go over that. Then you get into the actual game, and then there's at least 2 or 3 copies of this map. This is basically your game map, and then here's a copy here actually. So real easy just to copy this, and that's what I've done on this. I don't have those around here, but I back in the day I made a copy of this and then just played off of that map. So that's basically going to be your game map right there. This tells you which components. Basically, you have the map. There's index boxes. There's actually a roster sheet that you need to fill out of the forces and keep track of that. And there's a example of that in here. Again, I copied that and used that as my reference off the board, or out of the book, I should say. Then you've got the map, index boxes, and time scale. Setting up, it says tear out or photocopy the game map. So I'm going to tear something out of a book. They don't know me. And then you also have the rosters that you need to fill out as well. Then you got your sequence of play, events phase, and then there's tables, like there's an events table, there's an action table, Roman reassessment table, and then there's a page in here that has all those tables. So it's easy just to copy those and have those sitting out, so you're not paging through the book all the time to figure out where those tables are at. And this tells you how to use the different tables and what the responses are on there. Here's your combat phase. Kind of goes over that. And here's your victory conditions. Then you have like an historical notes here. So I find it kind of interesting, kind of basing on, I guess, how you do and how that matches up with history. Then you have some optional rules. And then there's a no suicide rule. If anybody's familiar with this history, I guess, spoiler alert, there was like a mass suicide for those that were held out at the top of the Masada that were under siege by the Romans. And I guess there's a rule if that doesn't happen. Here's designer notes and some of the background. Here's some more, just images for the historical piece. Then here's all your tables. So your events tables, Roman reassessment table, action table. And then that's just an example of the map. But here is the actual game map here. And as I said, there's a few copies of that in there that you could. So you can play in this book and just write it up in there. And so in that respect, it's like some of those other books that I've looked at over time on how they handle it. They just do multiple copies of the map. Then we get to the here's using the combat roster. Here's an example of how to use the combat roster, and then you actually have the combat rosters here of how you're keeping track of it per round, in the combat results and the like. So, and you got several of those combat rosters there. So again, for me, I just made a copy of the map, made a copy of the roster, and then, had at it. And then here's an example of play, how you go through it. And here's a suggestion as it is a classroom game. And here's some other books and games available. Now, these are just some of the other Minden games, which I have a few. I don't have very many. I have like this one and at least 2 others. And they're not. I don't know if I have any of their box games. A lot of stuff I have is really kind of more either books or Ziploc type stuff. But they do like a lot of miniature rules and a lot of naval type stuff. And they also have some solo naval games, I believe, as well. But they're not. They're black and white for at least the ones that I've seen or the ones I have. Most of the stuff here, they're not a how should I say? I don't know if they do box games. I just don't have that familiar with them. But they look like a more of a small publisher type of company that really is focused on printed material and not so much, a bunch of counters and the like. In fact, I think some of the games that do have counters, you might have to make your own counters. I think a lot of their games have that. I think they might be in color, but you still have to kind of make your own counters. They're very much like in a paper type form or regular paper type form, not like reinforced paper or poster board or anything like that. So they're definitely not counter stock, at least some of the stuff that I've seen. So not a lot of familiar with Minden, but they have a lot of stuff out there. But I think again, it's more of this small footprint printing or small publisher printing type aspect. But they do have this battle game book out here, and I think they do have others. Let's see if there's a copyright on this. When this came out, I think they're based out of the UK. See the copyright here. That would kind of give me an idea. 2018 on this one. So they've been out there for a while as doing this. This predates, I think, a lot of those ones that I've been covering or showed earlier, except for maybe the Sandhurst games. So I thought that you'd find this interesting. This is kind of a continuing in this whole space of board game books or book games or war game in a book, whatever you want to call it. And I thought that'd be interesting. I might try to see if there's others in this line. If you all know of them, tell me about them. Tell me about what you think of this board game book, or what others are in this line, or what you think about Minden in general. I find their games. I think I have one on the Somme that I thought was pretty interesting, but it was somewhat basic. It was on a chessboard type grid, and was not as involved as like a hex and counter. But I still found it interesting how they tackled that situation. So again, much more of a small footprint or small publisher type approach to some of their games. So anyway, thought I'd share that with you today as I have my cup of coffee. Hope you guys are having a wonderful day as well. Love to know your thoughts on this or any of these book games. What do you think about this whole series of games? So I've been getting comments on some of the other stuff, and really appreciate it. And I also really appreciate any time you spend with me. I know your time is precious, so any amount of time spent is greatly appreciated. Enjoy your beverage and the rest of your day. Thank you. Thanks for watching.